You're not a real man. Real men don't dictate their wives' clothes. My wife put on a miniskirt with nothing beneath to impress her boss, lied about a work dinner, but I found them holding hands in a dim bar. So I made their entire world crumble in a single night. I remember that morning so clearly. The coffee cup actually slipped from my fingers when I saw her. Samantha, my wife, standing there in our living room doorway. 8 years. Can you believe it? And she was wearing this skate. This skate. It was so short, it barely qualified as clothing. Black fabric, painted onto her hips, ending somewhere around mid-thigh. Her silk blouse, one button undone too many, revealing the delicate lace of her expensive bra. Where exactly are you going dressed like that? I asked. My voice was steady, somehow, despite the shock running through me, like ice water in my veins. Sam's green eyes flashed with something I hadn't seen before, a defiant spark. She crossed her arms, deliberately pushing her chest forward. I have an important meeting with my new supervisor today, she said, her tone dismissive. You wouldn't understand. It requires confidence and professionalism. Professionalism. I couldn't help the sarcasm dripping from my voice. Sam, it looks like you're going to a nightclub, not a marketing firm. Her face twisted into that familiar expression of contempt. I'd been seeing it more and more lately. You know what your problem is, Alec, she sneered. You're not a real man. Real men don't try to control what their wives wear. They support their ambitions. Those words, they hit like a physical slap, but I kept my expression neutral. 15 years in construction, dealing with impossible deadlines, impossible contractors. I'd learned to hide my emotions behind a mask of professional calm. A real man, huh? Interesting perspective. She grabbed her designer bag, one I'd worked overtime to buy her for Christmas, and headed for the door. Don't wait up for me. This meeting might run late. And afterwards, there's a company dinner I have to attend. The front door slammed with enough force to make the windows rattle. I stood there, in my faded jeans and flannel work shirt, staring at the empty space where my wife had just been. The woman who used to wear conservative business suits and asked for my opinion on her outfits. The woman who used to come home, buzzing with excitement, to tell me every detail of her day. Where had she gone? My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. A text message from Tommy Bird, my best friend since high school, now running his own small security company. Do you still need that background check we talked about? I'd mentioned Ryan Cowbell to Tommy weeks ago, Sam's new supervisor, transferred from the Portland office. Something about the guy gave me a bad vibe, though I couldn't pinpoint it. Maybe it was how Sam's whole attitude had shifted since he arrived. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she started treating me like an inconvenience. Yes, I typed back. Ryan Cowbell, Coastal Marketing Solutions. I need everything. Give me 48 hours, he replied. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked to the window overlooking our driveway. Sam's red sedan was already gone, leaving fresh tire marks on the asphalt. Mrs. Glay, our neighbor, in her 70s, was watering her garden, and, of course, she was watching our house. She caught my eye and waved, a sympathetic look on her face. That woman had eyes like a hawk and ears like a satellite dish. Nothing happened in our neighborhood without her knowing. The house felt different without Sam. Quieter, yes, but also lighter, somehow. I made myself another cup of coffee and sat at our kitchen table. I looked at the life we'd built, the mortgage we'd finally paid off, the furniture we'd chosen in happier times, the photos on the fridge from vacations and anniversaries. When had it all started to fall apart? My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. My foreman's number. Alec, we have a problem at the Morrison site. Jack's voice crackled through the speaker. The electrical inspection failed. We need you here ASAP. What? At least that still made sense. When I wielded a hammer or read blueprints, the world operated according to logical rules. Unlike my marriage, which seemed governed by some twisted physics I couldn't understand. I'm on my way, I said, grabbing my keys and tool belt. As I backed out of the driveway, Mrs. Glay had moved closer to the fence. She gave me another wave, this one more deliberate. I rolled down my window. Everything okay, Dee? She asked, her voice carrying that tone older women use when they know something you don't. Just going to work, Mrs. Glay. She nodded slowly, her gray eyes studying my face. That wife of yours left in quite a hurry this morning, all dressed up for something special. There was something in her tone, a hint that she knew more than she was saying. Mrs. Glay had lived here for 30 years. She knew everyone's business, often before they did. Business meeting, I said simply. She adjusted her gardening gloves. Well, have a good day at work, Alec. And remember, sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly. I drove to the job site with her words echoing in my mind. The Morrison project was a custom home renovation, the kind of job I enjoyed. It required both technical skill and creative problem-solving. But today, even the familiar rhythm of construction couldn't distract me from the growing unease in my chest. At lunchtime, Tommy called with preliminary info on Ryan Cowbell. Your wife's boss is an interesting character, Tommy said. 36 years old, twice divorced, originally from Boston. Made some enemies at his last job. Something about inappropriate relationships with subordinates. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of inappropriate relationships? The kind that end with harassment settlements and quiet resignations. The guy has a pattern, Alec. He targets married women, usually those going through tough times at home. The pieces started clicking into place, like a blueprint finally making sense. Sam's sudden interest in her appearance, the late nights, the way she'd been picking fights with me over trivial things, as if trying to justify something to herself. Keep digging, I told Tommy. I need to know everything. That night, I sat in my workshop behind the house, pretending to organize tools. Really, I was planning my next move. The workshop had always been my sanctuary, a place where I could think clearly, work with my hands. The walls were lined with equipment I'd collected over years of construction work. My phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Thought you should know your wife is at the Riptide Bar on Harbor Street. She's not alone. I stayed at the message for a long moment. Someone was looking out for me, though I couldn't guess who. The Riptide was a dive bar near the marina, the kind of place locals went to drink cheap beer and avoid their problems. It was not the kind of establishment where marketing executives held business dinners. I grabbed my jacket and headed to the truck. The drive to Harbor Street took 15 minutes, giving me plenty of time to consider my options. I could confront them directly, but that would give Sam ammo for whatever narrative she was building about our marriage. I could turn around and go home, pretend I never got the message. Or, I could gather intel first. Approach this like the strategic problem it was becoming. The Riptide was on a corner lot, its neon sign flickering against the early evening darkness. Through the windows, I could see the usual crowd of fishermen, dock workers, locals seeking refuge. And in a corner booth, I saw my wife. Sam was sitting across from a man I recognized from the photo on the coastal marketing website, Ryan Calbell. He was everything I wasn't. Polished, expensive suit, perfect haircut, that kind of confident smile that came from never having to worry about paying rent. His hand rested on the table, inches from Sam's. She was leaning forward, laughing at something he'd said. They looked comfortable together, intimate. I parked across the street and watched through my windshield, feeling like a private investigator in some noir movie. Except this wasn't entertainment. This was my life falling apart in real time. Ryan signaled the waitress for another round. Sam checked her phone, then looked around the bar nervously. She was worried about being seen. That told me everything I needed to know about the nature of her business dinner. My phone rang. Sam's name appeared on the caller ID. I took a deep breath. Hi, honey. Her voice sounded artificially cheerful. Just wanted to let you know dinner is running late, so don't wait up for me. Through the window, I saw her lips move as she spoke the lies. Ryan was smiling, apparently amused by her deception. No problem, I said, keeping my voice neutral, steady. You work hard. She ended the call and immediately leaned closer to Ryan, whispering something that made him laugh. His hand moved to cover hers on the table. I'd seen enough. I sat in my truck for another 10 minutes, watching my wife flirt with her supervisor while she thought I was safe at home. The rational part of my mind catalogued details, the way she touched her hair when she laughed, how she'd angled her body toward him, the fact that she'd lied so easily about her whereabouts. The emotional part of my mind felt like it was being fed through a wood chipper. Finally, I got out of the truck and crossed the street. The interior of the Riptide was exactly what you'd expect. Dim lighting, scarred wooden tables, the smell of fried food and spilled beer. A few regulars sat at the bar. Country music played softly. Sam and Ryan were so absorbed, they didn't notice me until I was standing right next to their booth. Well, I said, sliding into the seat next to Sam before either of them could react. What a surprise finding you guys here. Sam's face went white, then flushed red. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Ryan, to his credit, recovered faster, though I noticed his hand snatched back from Sam's as if burned. Alec, Sam stammered. We were just having a business dinner, I finished for her, my voice low and dangerous. In a dive bar. How professional. Ryan adjusted his tie, trying to project authority. Mr. Harper, I presume. I'm Ryan Calbell, Sam's supervisor. We were actually discussing some future projects over dinner. Is that what we call it? I signaled the waitress and ordered a beer, settling into my seat as if I planned to stay a while. Funny thing about business dinners is they usually involve food. I don't see any plates on this table. We already ate, Sam said quickly. We were just having a drink and talking about quarterly projections. Quarterly projections? I repeated, letting sarcasm drip from my voice. How fascinating. Tell me, Ryan, do you always conduct business meetings holding hands with your married female employees? Ryan's confident facade cracked slightly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Oh, I understand perfectly. My wife told me she was working late. Then she called to say she was at a company dinner. Instead, I find her at the local bar, dressed like she's auditioning for a music video, getting cozy with her boss. What exactly am I misunderstanding? Several other patrons had started paying attention. The Riptide wasn't a big place. Voices carried. Sam noticed the attention and shifted uncomfortably. Alec, please, she whispered urgently. You're making a scene. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I raised my voice slightly. I would hate for anyone to get the wrong impression about your business practices, Ryan. Ryan's face was turning red. Now he leaned forward, trying to project authority. Look, Harper, I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw my wife lying to me while playing footsie with her supervisor. I stood up abruptly, and Ryan flinched back. Here is some free advice from a working man to a corporate climber. Touch my wife again, and I'll redecorate your fancy car with a crowbar. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Ryan's mouth worked silently. I could practically see him calculating if I was serious. The answer was yes, though I had no intention of wrecking anyone's property, yet. You're crazy, Ryan managed to say finally. Maybe, but I'm the kind of crazy who has nothing left to lose. I finished my beer in one long swallow and set the empty bottle down harder than necessary. Enjoy the rest of your business meeting. I walked to the door, listening to Sam's chair scrape against the floor as she rushed to follow me. The other patrons watched with the interest of people who had stumbled upon better entertainment than the baseball game. Alec, wait. Sam caught up to me in the parking lot. Let me explain. I turned to face her, and she took a step back. Whatever she saw in my expression made her reconsider her approach. There's nothing to explain, Sam. You lied to me. You're having an affair, and you just got caught. Pretty straightforward situation. I'm not having an affair. The words came out too loud, too desperate. Ryan and I are just friends. We work together, and yes, sometimes we get drinks after work, but it's not what you think. Friends don't hold hands in dark corners of dive bars. We weren't holding hands. I have eyes, Sam. She tried a different tactic, stepping closer, softening her voice. Alec, baby, I know how this must look, but you're overreacting. Ryan is my supervisor, yes, but has also been a good friend during a difficult time in our marriage. A difficult time. The laugh that escaped me had no humor. Our marriage was fine until Ryan showed up. Suddenly, you're working late every night, buying new clothes, and treating me like an inconvenience. That isn't true, is it? When was the last time we had dinner together? When was the last time you asked about my day, or told me about yours without lying? When was the last time you looked at me the way you looked at him in there? Sam's face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Instead, she squared her shoulders and lifted her chin defiantly. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I've been spending time with Ryan. Yes, I enjoy his company. He treats me like an intelligent, attractive woman instead of a piece of furniture. He listens when I speak. He makes me feel alive again. Every word was like a punch to the gut, but I kept my expression neutral. And that justifies lying to me. I lied because I knew you would react exactly like this. You'd get jealous and possessive and try to control who I spend time with. I'm not trying to control you, Sam. I'm trying to save our marriage. Maybe our marriage isn't worth saving. The words hung between us like a challenge. In the distance, I could hear the waves against the marina docks, muffled noise from inside the bar. A car drove down Harbor Street, its headlights briefly illuminating Sam's face. She looked like a stranger. Is that really how you feel? I asked quietly. For a moment, her expression softened. Alec, Sam. Ryan appeared in the doorway of the bar, his voice uncertain. Everything good out here? The moment shattered. Sam's face hardened again, and she turned toward Ryan like a flower seeking sunlight. Everything is fine, she replied. I looked at my wife. Really looked at her. The woman I'd married 8 years ago never would have chosen a stranger over her husband in a public parking lot. The woman I'd fallen in love with would have been mortified by this whole situation. But that woman was gone. Replaced by someone I didn't recognize. You're right, I said. I'm leaving. But this conversation isn't over. I walked to my truck without looking back, though I could feel them both watching me. As I drove away, I saw them in my rearview mirror, standing close together in the parking lot, probably discussing what had just happened. The drive home gave me time to think. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made several decisions. First, I wasn't going to beg or plead or try to win Sam back with grand gestures. Second, I wasn't going to pretend this hadn't happened or hope it would blow over. And third, I was going to figure out exactly what I was dealing with before deciding how to respond. Mrs. Glay's porch light was on, and I could see her silhouette in her front window. She'd probably witnessed my hasty departure and would be curious about the outcome. Tomorrow, I'd have a conversation with her. Tonight, I had other priorities. I parked in the garage and went straight to my workshop. From a locked drawer in my workbench, I retrieved a small digital recorder I'd bought years ago to document issues on the job site. I tested the battery and recording quality. Then I slipped it into my shirt pocket. If Sam wanted to play games, I would make sure I understood all the rules. I didn't sleep much that night. Sam came home around midnight, slipping into bed as if trying not to wake me. She needn't have bothered. I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her careful movements. She lay on her side with her back to me, maintaining the charade that everything was normal. By the next morning, she was gone before I woke up, leaving only a stained coffee mug in the sink and a lingering scent of her expensive perfume. A note on the kitchen counter read, "Waking late again tonight. Important project deadline." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I made my own coffee and sat down to plan my day. First stop, Mrs. Glay. If anyone knew neighborhood gossip, it would be her. I found her in her garden tending the roses that lined our shared property line. She looked up as I approached, her weathered face crinkling into a knowing smile. "Good morning, Alec. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Good morning, Mrs. Glay. Your roses look good this year." "Thank you, dear. I've been using a new fertilizer." She straightened slowly, brushing dirt from her gardening gloves. "I couldn't help but notice some tension at your house lately." Here was my opening. Mrs. Glay was old school. She believed in marriage and family values. If I played this right, she could become an ally. "Sam and I are going through a rough patch," I admitted. "I'm trying to figure out what's going on." Mrs. Glay nodded sympathetically. "Marriage is hard work. Requires commitment from both sides." She paused, studying my face. "I've seen that supervisor of Hayes pick her up a few times. Fancy car, expensive clothes. Not the kind of man who understands the value of hard work." My pulse quickened. "Has he been here at the house?" "Oh yes, 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Always when you're at work. Last Tuesday, he waited in his car while she ran inside to change clothes. She came out wearing that short black dress. You know the one?" I knew the one. I'd bought it for her birthday last year, and she'd worn it exactly once before claiming it was too dressy for anywhere we went. They seemed friendly. I asked carefully. Mrs. Glay's expression turned disapproving. "Friendly isn't the word I would use. She got into that car like she was going somewhere special. And when she came home, the next morning, around 7 a.m., still wearing the same dress, but looking like she'd slept in it." Mrs. Glay shook her head sadly. "I'm sorry, Alec. I debated whether to tell you." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. "I appreciate your honesty, Mrs. Glay. What are you going to do?" "Good question. I'm still figuring that out." She reached over the fence and patted my arm with a dote-stained glove. "You're a good man, Alec Harper. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I thanked her and headed to work, but my mind was racing. Sam hadn't just been getting drinks with Ryan. She'd been sleeping with him. In our bed. At his apartment. The details mattered less than the reality that my marriage was over, even if Sam hadn't officially ended it yet. At the job site, I threw myself into physical labor, using the rhythm of hammer and saw to quiet the chaos in my head. Around noon, Tommy called with more info on Ryan Calbell. "Your boy Ryan is a real piece of work," Tommy said. "I spoke to a contact at his previous job in Portland. The guy left under suspicious circumstances. Harassment complaint from a married female employee. The company settled quietly to avoid bad publicity." "What happened to the employee?" "Divorced 6 months later. Lost her job, her house, and custody of her kids when her husband proved she'd had an affair." The pattern was becoming clear. Ryan targeted married women, seduced them, then moved on when things got complicated. The women were left dealing with the wreckage of their lives. "There's more," Tommy continued. "I dug into his finances a bit. The guy is in debt up to his eyeballs. Fancy apartment, expensive car, designer clothes, all funded on credit and loans. His one missed payment away from losing it all." "Interesting. What else?" "He has a gambling problem. Owes money to some serious people in Portland. Word is he took the job here to get away from his creditors." I filed this information away for future use. A man with financial trouble and a history of workplace misconduct was vulnerable in ways he probably didn't realize. "Keep digging," I told Tommy. "I want to know everything. Where does he live? What does he drive? Who does he associate with? What are his weaknesses?" "What are you planning, Alec?" "Not sure yet, but when I figure it out, I want to be prepared." That evening, I set up my surveillance. I parked down the street from Coastal Marketing Solutions and waited. Sam's car was in the lot along with several others. At 6:30, most employees left for the day. At 7 o'clock, Sam and Ryan walked out together, standing close and talking intimately. They got into Ryan's car, a silver BMW that probably cost more than I made in a year, and drove toward downtown. I followed at a distance. They went to an upscale restaurant, the kind of place Sam and I could never afford on my construction salary. I parked across the street and watched through the restaurant windows as they shared an intimate dinner. Ryan ordered wine, and Sam laughed at his jokes. He reached across the table to touch her hand, and she didn't pull away. Around 9 o'clock, they left the restaurant and drove to Ryan's apartment complex, a modern building with a doorman and valet parking. Sam got out of the car like she belonged there, like she'd done it many times before. I sat in my truck, looking up at the building, wondering which window belonged to Ryan's apartment. Somewhere up there, my wife was betraying our marriage vows again. My phone vibrated with a text from Sam. Project meeting running really late. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, work hard. The lie came so easily to her now. I wondered when she'd become such an accomplished deceiver, or if I'd just been too trusting to notice before. I drove home and went straight to my workshop. From my toolbox, I retrieved a small GPS tracking device Tommy had given me years ago to monitor expensive equipment on job sites. It was about the size of a matchbox and had a magnetic base. Tomorrow, I would place it on Ryan's car. If Sam wanted to play games, I'd make sure I knew all the rules. But first, I had a phone call to make. I pulled out my cell and dialed the number for Coastal Marketing Solutions. The after-hours voicemail system picked up, and I navigated to the company directory. When I found the company president's extension, I wrote down his direct number. Mr. Edison was going to be very interested to learn about his supervisor's extracurricular activities with merit employees. I spent the rest of the night researching Ryan Cowbell online. Social media profiles, professional networking sites, public records. I gathered every scrap of information I could find. By midnight, I had a complete dossier on the man destroying my marriage. Ryan Cowbell was 36, originally from Boston, twice divorced, with no children. He'd worked at 3 different marketing firms in the last 5 years, leaving each job under circumstances that weren't entirely clear in the public record. His LinkedIn profile boasted about his skills in building relationships and motivating team members. His Facebook page was a catalog of expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, and photos with attractive women who were never identified. He projected an image of success and sophistication, but Tommy's financial investigation suggested it was all smoke and mirrors. The man was a predator, and Sam was his latest victim. But unlike his previous targets, Sam was married to someone who wasn't going to roll over and accept defeat. I was still awake when Sam came home at 2 a.m., moving quietly through the house like a thief. She slipped into bed without a word, maintaining the fiction that she'd been working late at the office. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, and made my final decision about how to handle this situation. I wasn't going to confront her again. I wasn't going to beg her to choose me over Ryan. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I was going to destroy them both. Systematically and completely. The construction business had taught me patience, planning, and the importance of having the right tools for every job. This was just another project. And like all my projects, I intended to finish it right. The next morning, Sam was gone before sunrise, leaving only the scent of her perfume and another lie scrawled on a sticky note. Early meeting. Home late again. I smiled as I crumpled the note. Her predictability was going to make this easier. At 7 a.m., I called into work sick, something I'd done maybe 5 times in 15 years. Jack, my foreman, was surprised but didn't question it. I had a reputation for reliability, which meant I'd earned the benefit of the doubt. By 8 o'clock, I was parked outside Ryan's apartment complex, watching the valet area with binoculars. The BMW was in its assigned spot, gleaming silver in the morning sunlight. At 8:30, Ryan walked out of the building, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He looked every inch the successful executive, though I now knew it was mostly an illusion. He handed his keys to the valet and walked toward the street, probably heading to a nearby coffee shop. This was my chance. I walked up to the valet kid, who couldn't be more than 20, and flashed a friendly smile. "Excuse me, I'm supposed to meet my brother-in-law, Ryan Cowbell. Hey, but I think I'm early. Mind if I wait by his car?" The kid looked at the BMW, then at me. "You family, brother-in-law." "Brother-in-law," I repeated, keeping my tone casual. "He's dating my sister. You know how it is. Family obligations." The valet shrugged and turned his attention back to his phone. Close enough. I walked over to the BMW, admiring its pristine condition. Ryan clearly spent considerable time and money maintaining his image. I crouched by the rear bumper, pretending to tie my shoe while attaching the GPS tracker to the undercarriage. The magnetic base snapped into place with a satisfying click. "Nice car," I commented to the valet as I walked past. "Yeah, Mr. Cowbell takes good care of it. Gets it washed twice a week." "Sounds like him," I agreed. Though privately, I thought a man who washed his car twice a week had too much free time. Phase 1 complete. Now I could track Ryan's movements in real time, which would help me anticipate his next moves with Sam. My next stop was the offices of Coastal Marketing Solutions. The company occupied the 3rd floor of a modern office building downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and an open-plan layout that screamed creative workspace. Through the windows, I could see employees at their desks, including Sam, who was typing intently at her computer. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and found the building directory. Coastal Marketing's parent company, Atlantic Business Solutions, was based in Boston. The local office was just a satellite operation, which meant decisions about personnel issues would likely be made at the corporate level. From the fourth-floor landing, I had a clear view of the coastal marketing office space. I could see Sam at her desk, Ryan in his glass-walled office, and the general layout of the workspace. More importantly, I could see that Ryan's office had a clear view of Sam's desk, the predator watching his prey. I spent an hour observing their interactions. Ryan came out of his office several times, always finding excuses to stop at Sam's desk. He leaned over her shoulder to look at her computer screen, his hand resting casually on her chair. She tilted her head toward him when he spoke, smiling at comments that probably weren't that funny. Her body language told the whole story. They were comfortable with each other in a way that went far beyond professional courtesy. Sam touched her hair when Ryan approached, a gesture I recognized from our early dating days. Ryan's eyes lingered on her when he thought no one was looking. They weren't even trying to hide it, which suggested they'd gotten sloppy, maybe even arrogant. That callousness would be their undoing. Around noon, I drove to the Riptide bar and struck up a conversation with the bartender, a grizzled man named Eddie, who looked like he'd been pouring drinks since Prohibition. "You were here the other night," Eddie said, recognizing me immediately. "Had some words with that fancy guy and his lady friend." "That's right. Mind if I ask you something?" Eddie shrugged. "Shoot." "How often do they come in here? The fancy guy and the redhead?" "Maybe once a week for the last month. Always sit in that corner booth. Always order the same thing, wine for her, whiskey for him. They tip well, so I don't ask questions." "What do you make of them?" Eddie's weathered face crinkled into a knowing smile. "I think she's married and he's not her husband. I think they picked this place because they figure nobody they know would come to a dive bar. And I think they are both playing with fire." "Why do you say that?" "Because married women who sneak around in bars like this always get burned eventually. And guys like him, all flash and no substance. They run when things get hot." Eddie's assessment matched my own observations. Ryan was a coward who preyed on vulnerable women. And Sam was making the classic mistake of thinking she was special. "What would you do if you were in my position?" I asked. Eddie considered this while wiping down a glass. "Depends on what kind of man you are. Some guys would fight for their woman. Others would just walk away. Me? I'd make sure they both got what was coming to them." "And what would that be?" "Public humiliation. Nothing hurts people like them more than having their dirty laundry ad in front of everyone they're trying to impress." I thanked Eddie and left a generous tip. His advice aligned with my own instincts. Ryan and Sam were vulnerable to exposure because they cared so much about appearances. That afternoon, I visited 3 mall locations: Ryan's bank, his dry cleaner, and the upscale gym where he maintained a membership. At each stop, I gathered small pieces of intel about his routines and habits. The bank teller mentioned he'd been asking about loan extensions. The dry cleaner owner complained about his overdue account. The gym receptionist noted his membership was set to expire next month. Tommy's assessment had been accurate. Ryan was living beyond his means, maintaining an expensive lifestyle through credit and borrowed money. He was financially vulnerable, which gave me leverage I could use when the time was right. By evening, I had a comprehensive understanding of both Ryan's and Sam's daily routines. The GPS tracker showed Ryan had gone from his apartment to the office, to an expensive restaurant for lunch, and back to the office. Predictable patterns that would make planning easier. I drove home and found another note from Sam, working late on big presentation. Dinner at the office. According to the GPS tracker, Ryan's car was parked at an Italian restaurant across town. I made myself a sandwich and sat down to wait. At 10:30, my phone vibrated with a text from the same unknown number that had tipped me off about the Riptide. "They're at his apartment again. Thought you should know." This time, I didn't drive over to confirm what I already knew. Instead, I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to Mr. Edison, the president of Coastal Marketing Solutions. "Dear Mr. Edison," I wrote, "I'm writing to bring to your attention some concerning behavior by one of your supervisors, Ryan Cowbell." I spent an hour crafting the email, making sure I sounded like a concerned citizen rather than a jealous husband. I detailed the pattern of Ryan's inappropriate relationships with married employees. I referenced his history at previous jobs and suggested the company might want to investigate before facing potential legal liability issues. I didn't send the email, not yet. But I saved it in my drafts folder, ready to deploy when the moment was right. Next, I created a fake social media profile using a stock photo and generic information. It took some technical maneuvering, but I managed to send friend requests to several of Sam's coworkers, including Melissa Carr, who I knew from office parties was the company's biggest gossip. Melissa accepted the friend request within an hour, probably assuming I was someone she'd met at a networking event. Through her social media posts, I gained access to the inner workings of office politics at Coastal Marketing. She posted constantly about work drama, upcoming events, and interpersonal conflicts among staff. Her most recent post was particularly interesting. "Some people need to remember that the office is a professional environment, not a dating service. Just saying." The post had attracted several comments from other employees, most of them using coded language to discuss inappropriate relationships and behavior. It was clear Sam and Ryan's affair wasn't as secret as they thought. Their coworkers had noticed and were talking about it. Perfect. Office gossip would amplify any action I decided to take. At midnight, Sam came home and went through her usual routine of trying not to wake me. This time, I was genuinely asleep, exhausted from a day of reconnaissance and planning. But I woke up when she whispered into her phone in the bathroom. "I can't keep doing this, Ryan. Alec is getting suspicious, and people at work are starting to talk." I couldn't hear Ryan's response, but Sam's side of the conversation told me everything I needed to know. "I know you think it's exciting, but I'm scared. What if he finds out? What if Mr. Edison finds out?" Another pause. "You're right. We need to be more careful. Maybe we should cool things down for a while." Another pause. Longer this time. "I don't want to lose you either, but I can't lose everything else. Give me some time to figure this out." She ended the call and crept back to bed, settling on her side with her back to me. I lay there in the dark, processing what I'd heard. Sam was getting nervous, which meant she might try to end the affair, or at least put it on hold. That would complicate my plans, but it also presented an opportunity. If I could create enough pressure at the right moment, I could force them into making mistakes that would expose them completely. I smiled in the dark. Phase 2 was about to begin. The next morning brought the first crack in their facade. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen when Sam's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and quickly declined the call, but not before I saw Ryan's name on the screen. "Work calling already?" I asked casually. "Wrong number," she said, but her hand shook as she poured her coffee. The phone rang again. This time she turned it off completely. "Must be persistent wrong numbers," I observed. Sam forced a laugh. "You know how telemarketers are." She was cracking under the pressure, and I hadn't even started applying it yet. After Sam left for work, I checked the GPS tracker. Ryan's car was at his apartment complex, not the office. Interesting. I drove to Coastal Marketing and confirmed Sam's car was in the lot, but Ryan's designated parking spot was empty. Through the office windows, I could see Sam at her desk, checking her phone repeatedly. She looked anxious, distracted. Other employees were giving her curious looks. At 10 a.m., Ryan's car finally moved from his apartment to the office. I watched from my vantage point across the street as he entered the building. Within minutes, I could see him in his glass office, gesturing animatedly on his phone. Sam kept glancing toward his office, but he didn't acknowledge her. Trouble in paradise. I decided to accelerate the timeline. From my truck, I called the main number for Coastal Marketing. Coastal Marketing Solutions. Jennifer speaking. "How can I help you?" "Hi, Jennifer. I'm calling about some concerning behavior I witnessed involving one of your employees. Is there a manager I can speak to?" "What kind of concerning behavior, sir?" "Well, I'd prefer to discuss it with a supervisor. It involves inappropriate conduct between a manager and a subordinate." There was a pause, long enough for me to imagine the woman on the other end deciding if I sounded credible. "Let me transfer you to Mr. Edison's office." Perfect. A slight click signaled the line transfer, followed by a burst of instrumental hold music, then a few seconds of complete silence before I found myself speaking with Mr. Edison's assistant, a brisk, efficient woman whose clipped tone suggested she was constantly managing 3 calendars at once. In less than half a minute, I'd arranged a phone appointment for myself that afternoon. I gave a fake name and contact number, a prepaid phone I'd bought specifically for this situation. As I hung up, the weight of the small burner phone in my palm felt both reassuring and incriminating. Phase 2 was officially underway. At noon, I drove to the Italian restaurant where Ryan and Sam had been meeting. I approached the hostess stand. The hostess, a chatty woman in her early 20s, greeted me with a bright, practiced smile. "I'm trying to plan a surprise for my wife," I explained, letting a small, sheepish grin tug at my mouth. "She's been coming here with her white colleagues, and I want to make sure I get the same table they usually request." Her eyes lit up immediately. Romance, plus a secret? The perfect combination. "Oh, what's your wife's name? Maybe I remember her." "Sam Harper, redhead, usually comes in with a tall guy in expensive suits." Recognition crossed her face like a light switching on. The hostess's expression shifted slightly, her bright smile flattening into something more conspiratorial. She leaned in a little. "Oh, yes. I remember them. They usually request table 12. It's in the back corner. Very private. They seem very close." "Close?" I repeated, letting my brows knit together in feigned confusion, feigning ignorance. She hesitated for exactly half a second, then gave in to the urge to storytell. "Well, I don't like to gossip, but they don't act like May colleagues, if you know what I mean. More like, well, like they are having an affair." I feigned shock, adding a small nervous laugh. "Seriously, that is concerning. My wife mentioned her supervisor was being inappropriate with several employees." The hostess's mouth tightened. Moral indignation settled over her features. "I wouldn't be surprised. He's very touchy with her, and she doesn't seem to mind. Last week, I saw him kiss her hand when they thought no one was looking." I let a moment of silence stretch between us. "Would you be willing to tell someone in authority what you've observed?" This might be harassment. The hostess nodded eagerly. Absolutely. I hate seeing married women being taken advantage of by their bosses. I thanked her, keeping my voice low and grateful, and left my fake contact info, suggesting she might be called as a witness in a potential investigation. That afternoon, right on schedule, I had my phone conversation with Mr. Edison. I sat at my kitchen table with the laptop open in front of me. When the Bona phone buzzed, I took a deep breath and slipped into the role I'd created. Mr. Edison, I'm calling because I've observed some troubling interactions between one of your supervisors, Ryan Calbell, and a married employee named Samantha Harper. What kind of interactions? Edison's voice was wary, but interested. Intimate dinners at restaurants, holding hands, kissing, I said evenly. The kind of behavior that suggests an inappropriate relationship between a supervisor and a subordinate. I understand, Mr. Calbell has a history of this kind of conduct at previous employers. There was a long pause. These are serious allegations, he said finally. Do you have any evidence? I have photographs from a restaurant, I replied, and the hostess there would be willing to provide testimony about their behavior. I also have information about similar incidents at Mr. Calbell's previous job in Portland. I see. Can you email me this information? Of course. I let just a hint of urgency enter my voice. I should mention that other employees seem to be aware of the relationship. There has been social media gossip about inappropriate office behavior. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We take these matters very seriously. I immediately drafted a carefully crafted email to Mr. Edison, attaching the photos I'd taken of Sam and Ryan at the restaurant. I added screenshots of the social media gossip I'd found, anonymous posts hinting at office romances. I also included the restaurant hostess's contact info and a concise summary of Ryan's employment history. When I clicked send, the email slid into the digital ether, a silent little weapon already in flight. By evening, the pressure was starting to show. According to the GPS tracker, Ryan had left work early and gone to a bar across town. Sam had also left work early, but instead of going home or to Ryan's apartment, she'd driven to a mall and spent 3 hours walking aimlessly. When she finally came home at 8 p.m., she looked exhausted and stressed. Tough day at work. I asked without looking up from the newspaper I was pretending to read. You could say that. She poured herself a large glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table. There are rumors going around the office about inappropriate relationships. What kind of inappropriate relationships? The kind where supervisors get too friendly with their employees. She took a large gulp of wine. Mr. Edison called a staff meeting this afternoon. He said he'd received some complaints and was going to investigate workplace conduct. I turned a page of the newspaper. Sounds like someone is in trouble. Maybe. Her voice was small, uncertain. Alec, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think I'm a good person? The question took me by surprise. I looked up from the paper and saw genuine vulnerability in her eyes. I'm starting to wonder if I'm becoming someone I don't recognize. Here was my chance to offer forgiveness, but too much had happened. I think you're going through a phase, I said carefully. People sometimes make mistakes when they are unhappy or confused. What if the mistakes are too big to fix? Then you live with the consequences. She finished her wine in silence. My phone vibrated with a text from Tommy. Got some interesting info on Ryan's gambling debts. Want to meet tomorrow? I typed back, absolutely. Sam went to bed early. I stayed up late, planning the next phase of my campaign. Mr. Edison's investigation would take a few days to gather momentum, but when it did, it would create exactly the kind of public scandal that would destroy Ryan's and Sam's reputations. But I wasn't going to stop there. Ryan had a gambling problem and financial difficulties, and Sam's growing guilt and anxiety meant she was close to a total breakdown. Tommy and I met at a diner outside of town. He slid a manila folder across the table. Your boy Ryan is in deeper trouble than we thought, he said. He owes $70,000 to a bookie in Portland. I opened the folder and scanned the documents, bank records, credit reports, loan applications. How did you get all this? I have contacts. Let's leave it at that. Tommy leaned forward. Alec, this guy is desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things, like trying to disappear with someone else's money, or someone else's wife. The implication hit me like a cold slap. You think he plans to run? I think he's running out of options. I looked at the financial documents more carefully. Ryan had maxed out 6 credit cards. His expensive lifestyle was built on a foundation of borrowed money. Is there more? Tommy continued. I looked into his past relationships. The married woman in Portland emptied her joint bank account before leaving her husband. $8,000 gone overnight. And Ryan left town 2 weeks later. The pattern was clear. Ryan used women to solve his financial problems. Sam was being groomed for massive theft. I need to go to our bank, I said, standing up abruptly. Already thought of that. Tommy handed me a printout. I had a buddy check Sam's credit. She applied for a personal loan yesterday. $50,000. My hand shook as I read the document. Sam had lied about her income and forged my signature on the application. If the loan was approved, she'd have access to enough money to disappear with Ryan. What do you want to do? Tommy asked. I want to destroy them both. Legally. Completely. We spent the next hour planning a coordinated assault. Tommy would contact Ryan's creditors. I would call the bank and report the fraudulent loan application. We would also contact Mr. Edison with additional evidence of Ryan's financial crimes. But first, I had a more immediate problem. I drove directly to our bank and requested an emergency meeting with the branch manager. Within an hour, I'd frozen all joint accounts, revoked Sam's access to our credit cards, and filed a fraud report on the forged loan application. Your wife is going to be very unhappy about this, the manager warned. My wife is going to be very unhappy about a lot of things, I replied. Next, I drove to Coastal Marketing Solutions. Through the windows, I could see Sam at her desk looking increasingly agitated. At 3 p.m., Mr. Edison stepped out of the elevator with two men in suits. They went straight to Ryan's office. Within minutes, I could see Ryan gesturing defensively. At 4 p.m., the investigators left Ryan's office, followed by Ryan himself. He was carrying a cardboard box. Security guards escorted him to the elevator. Sam jumped up from her desk and tried to follow, but Mr. Edison appeared and guided her into a conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see him showing her documents. Her face went white. She was trapped. My phone rang. It was Sam. Alec, I need you to come to my office right now. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? Someone has been spreading lies about me and Ryan. They say we were having an affair, but it's not true. You have to help me prove that. Sam, I can't help you prove something that isn't true. I know about the affair. I know about the loan application you filed with my forged signature. I know everything, Sam. I hung up and turned off my phone. Within an hour, Ryan's BMW was being repossessed. I watched from across the street. At 6 p.m., Tommy called. Ryan's creditors got my message. There are 3 different collection agencies heading to his apartment right now. And Sam? Mr. Edison fired her an hour ago. The walls were closing in on both of them. That night, I waited at home for Sam to return. She arrived at 8 p.m., her professional composure completely shattered. You did this, she said, her voice raw. You ruined my life. I didn't ruin anything, Sam. I just stopped pretending I didn't see what you were doing. I protected myself from being robbed by my own wife. She stared at me, and I could see the exact moment she realized I knew about the loan application. That isn't what it looks like. It looks like fraud. It looks like you and your boyfriend were planning to steal $50,000 and disappear together. We weren't going to disappear. We were going to pay you back. Ryan said he had a plan. He said we could start fresh somewhere else. Ryan is a con artist. You're not special, Sam. You're just the latest victim. She collapsed into a chair. That isn't true, she sobbed. Ask him. Oh, wait. You can't. His phone has been disconnected for non-payment. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a beer. When I came back to the living room, Sam was gone. An hour later, she returned home looking even more defeated. He's gone, she said quietly. Moved out this afternoon. Left no forwarding address. Shocking. You were right about everything. She sat across from me. What happens now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices. You're divorcing me. That depends on whether you plan to fight me or accept responsibility for what you've done. Sam looked around our living room. I don't want a divorce, she said finally. I want to fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Sam. Some things can only be survived. She started crying then. Deep, wrenching sobs. I watched her fall apart and felt nothing except the cold satisfaction that justice had been served. Ryan Cowbell was ruined. Sam had lost her job and her reputation and faced potential criminal charges. And I knew exactly what kind of person I'd married. I finished my beer and headed toward the bedroom. Alec, she called. I turned. I am sorry for everything. I know you are, Sam. But sorry doesn't fix anything. Sorry is just the price you pay for making terrible choices. I went to bed alone that night. Outside, Mrs. Glay's porch light was on, watching over the neighborhood like a guardian angel. The miniskirt had been Sam's declaration of independence. In the end, it had become her surrender. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to protect yourself from betrayal like this? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.